Now, hope you had a nice break. So just the last thing that I just want to put in here for you is roughly this is both day 0 and day 28. Our full moon will always be day 14, halfway. Our first quarter will be at day 7, and our last quarter will be at day 21. And it roughly takes 28 days, slightly less than 28 days, for the moon to orbit the Earth. Now, going back into here, so I will leave this here for you. I will also put it into the class notebook for you, the individual photos. You may like to print them if that's possible, but this is just showing you in order of sequence. So a new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous moon, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, and waning crescent. So we just had a full moon on the 28th. You're going to be doing this 5 days later. So if you look at our moons tonight, we are somewhere between these two phases currently in terms of our moon. Now the last part that we have to do today are eclipses, and there are two types of eclipses. There is a thing called a solar eclipse, and there is a thing called a lunar eclipse, and you may be lucky to have seen them. These are images of them, and we will, I think, show you a little video first. Now, when we talk about a solar eclipse, in your head you've got to figure out where is the Earth in all of this, and how is the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun arranged for each type of eclipse. So I'll give you what my hint is in a minute. Oh, we'll see, can we get to here now in the skinniest one that doesn't want to be found.
Welcome to Moo Math and Science. In this video, I'd like to talk about the difference between a solar and lunar eclipse. When the shadow of one celestial body, like the moon or the earth, falls on another, an eclipse occurs. A solar eclipse happens when the moon comes between the earth and the sun, and the shadow of the moon falls on part of the earth. A lunar eclipse happens when the earth comes between the sun and the moon, and the shadow of Earth falls on the moon. Let's talk about a couple ways to help you remember the difference between a solar and lunar eclipse. The order of the celestial bodies during a solar eclipse is the sun, moon, and Earth, or SME. Also, please remember that the shadow of the moon only falls on a small portion of the Earth, and people during this portion can look towards the sun to see the solar eclipse. Remember, never look directly at the sun. That's not healthy. During a lunar eclipse, the order of the celestial bodies is sun, earth, moon, or SEM. Next, you may be wondering why you don't see a solar and lunar eclipse every month. The reason is that the moon's orbit around the earth is tilted by about 5 degrees relative to the orbit of the earth around the sun. This tilt is just enough to place the moon out of the earth's shadow for most full moons, and the earth out of the moon's shadow for most new moons. So there we go, two different types of eclipses, a solar and a lunar. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math uploads a new map.
Alrighty, so how are they different? So in a solar eclipse, it is the moon that's between the earth and the sun. So if we draw our sun here, apologies for not having the yellow, and you will have your moon, and this is our earth. And what we've said is that it's actually, the light is only blocked on a really, really small portion of the earth. Now, there was a last solar eclipse in the northern hemisphere was in 1999, and the reason I know of that was because I happened to be living in the southern hemisphere and all my friends were talking about it, and I was just in the wrong place. So I have yet to see a solar eclipse. It will happen at a new moon if the angle is correct, and they use this word totality. So that's the word they use to describe when the moon blocks the sun's light, and it can be up to 7.5 minutes long. And it's very weird by all accounts because the birds stop chirping, animals are going confused and they think it's bedtime, and it only lasts for 7.5 minutes, and everything just goes quiet and weird, and it's supposedly very good fun. So in a solar eclipse, it is the sun, the moon is blocking the sun. So SME for solar. So if you can come up with a silly sentence, and I'd love to have it, because I still haven't found one that suits me, to do solar eclipse. SME is our hint for that. Good news, in Ireland we will have a partial solar eclipse. So on the 10th of June by 11:05, if you look out your window and the weather is cloudless, then this is what we would see. This is the moon's shadow, and this would be the sun. So that's as good as it's going to get for us this year. Now in terms of our lunar eclipse, so our lunar eclipse is now when the sun is still here, but now it's the earth that is in the way, and it is going to cast its shadow, and usually it can cover the whole moon, and instead of it going totally black, it actually, the moon goes pink, like a red moon, blood moon. There are different versions of it. So in this time our earth is between the sun and the moon, so we have SEM. So again, if you can come up with something, I would love to hear it. And it'll block the sun's light. Usually happens at a full moon, and the moon will appear red. It can appear other colors too, because it's the sun's light is passing through our atmosphere, and it's actually coloring the moon. And in terms of how often it happens, it at least twice a year, and can be 5 or 6 times a year depending on the angles involved. So we don't get our next lunar eclipse until 2022, so you guys will just be preparing for your junior cycle, and obviously you'll be up at 5:11 in the morning to see the pink moon. Now that brings us to the end of this little section of Earth and Space. I am on Zoom if you have questions. You will find the homework on the assignment and in the class notebook page, and get in touch if there are any problems.